we must remember that China still helps North Korea evade sanctions. There's a lot of evidence for this, yes? I think we shouldn't delude ourselves into thinking that China is a sort of benign actor here. It's not. And this makes the threat of the growing partnership between North Korea and Russia rather concerning. We're at a stage now where there is a wealth of heightened tension on the Korean Peninsula, not only because of the effects of Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine. I think for a start, I think we all know that the past week has highlighted key issues in South Korean domestic politics and how this might affect South Korea's foreign policy posture. We also have the ongoing vertical proliferation of nuclear weapons on the part of North Korea. We have relations between South and North Korea at an all-time low, and then we have an increasingly aggressive China as well, not just in terms of economic coercion, but also political coercion, extending across the Northeast Asian region and beyond. But where we are now is particularly concerning when we look at the relationship between North Korea and Russia, I think for two main reasons. Firstly, North Korea is now not just a peripheral observer to Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine, it is a full-fledged participant. We've seen in the past few weeks growing evidence of North Korean troops in their thousands, if not tens of thousands, being deployed to the Kursk region, if not beyond. Secondly, and relatedly, therefore, this highlights another concerning trend, which is the broader North Korea-Russia relationship. Ever since Russia's initial invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, we've seen this renewed partnership gain particular prominence and heighten in its nature. But the relationship has moved beyond merely the transactional in terms of North Korea supplying Russia with 122 and 152 millimeter artillery shells, then going further to supply Russia with ballistic missiles, debris from which has been seen in the Kharkiv region and beyond, to now when actually North Korea is deploying manpower. And I think what's particularly concerning is that all of this is fundamentally driven by North Korea's underlying strategy, which is not limited to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It's a clear element of North Korea's post-Cold War strategy, but it's been heightened following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And this strategy is what I call strategic delinquency, behaving badly in order to reap rewards. Linked to this is North Korea's fundamental objective. What does Kim Jong Un want, ultimately? Well, Kim Jong Un wants to strengthen its North Korea's domestic nuclear weapons and missile development. Ultimately, Kim not only wants regime survival of his own regime, but he wants North Korea to gain recognition internationally as a de facto nuclear-armed state. Over the last few months, ever since Putin and Kim Jong Un signed a comprehensive strategic partnership treaty on the 19th of June this year, there have been an increasing number of unknowns. And this makes the threat of the growing partnership between North Korea and Russia rather concerning. One big unknown pertains to what's going in the direction from Moscow to Pyongyang. We know that Russia has been supplying North Korea with oil in clear violation of sanctions. I think that goes without saying, but it is still worth saying. We know that Russia has provided North Korea more broadly with financial assistance and with food assistance. But that is not what Kim Jong Un wants the most. What Kim Jong Un wants the most is advanced missile technology, particularly advanced military technology. We know this because in 2021, Kim Jong Un made very clear how he wanted to expand the quantity and the quality of North Korea's weapons arsenals. This is why it's concerning, because if Russia is providing North Korea with advanced military technology, North Korea can not only develop its own nuclear weapons and delivery systems and strengthen the scope and sophistication of these systems. But as I mentioned at the very start of my remarks, given the fact that North Korea's relationship with South Korea is at an all-time nadir, an all-time low, there remains a risk that North Korea could provoke South Korea using some of these Russian acquired technology. All of this we do not know for sure, and this is why the renewed relationship between North Korea and Russia is particularly concerning globally.
If we could possibly dig down a little bit more into the way that this is affecting the Sino-Russian relationship and what we might expect.
We know that China has not actually been sitting idly by. China is one of the key enablers of Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine. China and Russia have continued to exchange um, dual use technologies to assist Russia's capabilities. At the same time that China has said very little about the North Korea Russia relationship. We need to remember that weeks before the 24th of February 2022, Xi Jinping and Putin agreed to upgrade the relationships between Beijing and Moscow to what was termed a no limits partnership. They are united in their desire to present and put forward what they call an alternative global order to rival that of the US-led liberal international order. This rhetoric of an alternative global order, I think, is expected to continue. We should expect it to continue on the part of Beijing and Moscow, but not just China and Russia. North Korea also expounds these claims. Iran as well. So even though the interests of these individual member states are not the same, whether we're talking about China, Russia, Iran, or North Korea, what some have called the crinks, okay, others have called it the axis of evil, the axis of autocracies. There are many different characterizations. These countries are united in a desire to present an anti-Western coalition, and I think the ongoing nature of the Ukraine war will only perpetuate this coalition, even though, as I've said, the interests of these individual member states are obviously not identical. If claims by the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, in very recent claims that actually Russia has been providing North Korea with some form of technology to assist its nuclear development, as more evidence becomes uncovered in this regard, for South Korea, another red line would be crossed. And I think for Seoul, it's very important to make clear that these red lines, more and more red lines are going to be crossed, and South Korea therefore really cannot sit idly by. There will come a point, perhaps we have already reached this point, when South Korea needs to be clear as to how it can strengthen its support for Ukraine.
How we might expect to see the strategic delinquency and the provocation from North Korea of South Korea change, especially now it has access to Russian technology. What do you think the watch points are?
North Korea, as we know, has always provoked South Korea, even before North Korea tested its first nuclear device in 2006, on the 9th of October 2006. But in the past year, we have seen quite a significant change in North Korea's policy towards South Korea. At the turn of the new year, Kim Jong Un made clear that North Korea would now no longer pursue the goal of reunification of the Korean peninsula under the North's control. This had been a time-old goal of his father, Kim Jong-il, and his grandfather, Kim Il-sung. Instead, Kim Jong-un said North Korea would now view South Korea as the primary foe, and in the event of any conflict, seek to reclaim the territory and absorb the territory. There is a slight contradiction here. One cannot reclaim something that wasn't one's own in the first place, perhaps. So we've seen a shift in policy, okay, and there are many reasons for this. I'm just going to outline one, which could be Kim Jong-un's desire to carve out a unique legacy as the third North Korean leader and differentiate himself from his father and grandfather. As a result of this, policy shift, we have seen North Korea significantly enhance its provocations towards South Korea, particularly through brinkmanship. Kim Jong Un knows very well, I think, that if North Korea were to use nuclear weapons in any conflict on the Korean Peninsula, that would be the end of his regime, that would be the end of North Korea as we know it. But that does not stop North Korea from engaging in other forms of provocation.
What's the Chinese and North Korean relationship looking like right now? And how can we expect that to change in the near future?
In my view, the relationship between China and North Korea, even historically, and by historically I mean even during the Cold War, was not good. I mean, allegedly, Mao once said they were akin to as close as lips and teeth. I think that's an overstatement. I would say it's a sort of tolerance. The relationship has been tolerable. Um, Moving forward, I think we need to remember that China really didn't look upon Kim Jong Un hugely fondly when he took power in December 2011. It took him nearly 7 years to meet Xi Jinping. Okay, if they were best friends, well, a 7 year delay when there's a new leader, I place a question mark there. Um, there is, I think, in my view, likely to be some unease in China given North Korea's rapprochement with Russia. Kim Jong Un's repeated claims that Russia is North Korea's number one partner, that Putin is his number one comrade. I think if you're China, you would not be best pleased. But on the other hand, we know that China cares more about its international status and reputation than North Korea does and than Russia does. So perhaps actually China can just sit back and let Russia be the bad cop, whilst China sits back and does very little. We must remember that China still helps North Korea evade sanctions. There's a lot of evidence for this, yes? I think we shouldn't sort of delude ourselves into thinking that China is a sort of benign actor here. It's not.